At 6:07 a.m., I opened my door to an orange eviction notice zip-tied to the handle, the tag snapping in the cold air, and two guys in neon vests were already on my steps, drawing a chalk line like a surgeon marking where to cut. Behind them, the HOA president smiled over a travel mug and said, "Dial suite. We're widening our pathway. You can pay the impact fee by tomorrow, or we'll move your porch for you." That was the moment the coffee died in my hand, and the part of me trained to stay calm kicked in, because I've worked emergencies, and I know when somebody is bluffing with a clipboard and when they're holding a knife. I'm Mason Clark, former paramedic, current handyman, new owner of a lopsided cedar cottage my grandpa built at the end of Willow Trace Court, inside Silver Pine Meadows, about 25 minutes outside Nashville. And that porch is the sound of my family. Boards that creak like an old friend, clearing their throat nails. You can point to and say, "He set that one the summer I was born." Silver Pine looks peaceful. From a drone, white fences, copy-paste, mailboxes, geese with an attitude. But on the ground, it's rules. On rules, a binder with tabs for more binders, and the woman who loves those tabs is Patricia Hale. Haircut like a metronome blazer that squeaks when she turns clipboard. She holds like a badge. She read me sections from a laminated rule book, the way a flight attendant talks through oxygen masks. Section 4C uniform, porch depth. Section 7B, proved mailbox color. Is sandbar beige. Yours is cream. Also, your hose bib faces the common walkway. We'll need to address water misuse. She never looked at my face, only the porch, the mailbox, the hose like people are just scenery that occasionally pays dues. I kept my voice low and level because volume doesn't win fights. Like this paper does, told her my lot predates the HOA. The original survey from 1971 is recorded at the county. The porch sits inside my line. She smiled like a printer and tucked a pink slip into my palm. First violation logged. Then her crew finished measuring, and the big guy with kind eyes whispered, "I'm just the boots." Sorry, and I nodded, because sometimes good people carry bad clipboards. On the way to work, I stopped at the county kiosk that smells like dust and toner, typed my parcel number into a greasy screen, watched the plat map load in blue and gray like an old video game. And there it was, neat as a tattoo. An ingress and egress easement recorded for Lot 12. The gravel spur is private access, not a shared walkway. I printed the map for $1 in coins, which felt like paying for common sense, and drove home to find yellow-cut marks slashed across my porch boards and a stake that read, "Construction begins Monday." My phone buzzed with a text from a blocked number. Friendly reminder, hey, the fee, save time for everyone. I laughed once the wrong kind of laugh and told myself I wasn't going to be the guy who yells in an office. Then I became exactly that guy, without raising my voice. The HOA office lives next to the pool house and smells like lemon cleaner and paper stress. The receptionist Erin polished the same stack of forms, like friction could make the day smoother. And when I put the plat on the counter, she read from a script per policy. Any structure visible from a common pathway is subject to aesthetic standardization. You know what I mean? Before I could answer, Patricia slid out of her glass box with that laminated smile. "Mason, good you're here. We're on a timeline. You'll thank me when your property value goes up." I told her I'd be dead before my value went up if she sent a crew to saw my porch. She tapped her pen like a countdown. "Court policy vote. We can do all that. Meanwhile, we move forward." On the wall, a vendor list was posted for transparency. One name stuck in my head, for no reason except trouble. Like simple names, B&B Apex Services, Landscaping, and Pathway Enhancement. I wrote it down on a torn envelope because bad facts deserve paper. Day 2. The push tightened and turned petty orange tag on my spigot water restriction investigation, a tow warning for my old EMT decals being offensive graphics, a glossy letter about a vista corridor adjustment that would align sight lines by shaving 2 feet off my steps. That night, I sat on the porch and listened to the boards talk, told the house about Grandpa's coffee and his little ritual. All right then. And I told myself the same thing. Help came from 2 doors down. Roy Bennett lines in his yard, straight enough to set a watch to ex-surveyor, with a binder thick as Sunday, tapping a carpenter's pencil on my map, see the dotted line. That's your ingress recorded in 71 HOA came decades later. Their authority stops here. While we were bent over the paper, my other neighbor, Alicia Gomez, texted me a dawn video of Patricia in a windbreaker, pointing a laser at my steps, saying, "Cut here, move the tread. If the owner makes noise, call security." Birds chirped, a truck beeped in reverse, and inside my chest something moved from fear to focus. I filed a public records request for vendor contracts, minutes easement maps, and Aaron accidentally CC'd me on an internal thread, where Patricia typed the quiet part out loud. "If we move fast, Mason can't appeal in time, he'll fold. That line hit below the ribs, where you store promises to people who aren't here." Mine was simple. Don't lose Grandpa's porch. The twist came wearing a paperclip. Minutes and vendor lists landed, and B&B Apex turned out to be less a company than a mailbox registered to a guy named Trent Bishop, who, surprise, is Patricia's brother-in-law, same P.O. box as the HOA. Invoices for Vista mulching and corridor grooming lined up perfectly with Roy's trail camera shots of raccoons, and no crews, big numbers, small work. I went back to the basement stacks for the one record. Everyone forgets a temporary construction easement granted to the original developer to lay sidewalks in the 70s. Sunset clause long gone, expired a decade ago. Patricia was driving a bulldozer through a door that bricked itself shut 10 years back. That was when the heat drained out, and a steady cold moved in the part of me that knows you win, with dates and stamps. I set 3 aluminum private easement signs on steel posts at the line and poured quickset in the holes. They vanished overnight. I put them back, sent. Certified cease and desist letters. Every morning with statute numbers in the subject. Map pages highlighted green return receipts, stacking on my table with Aaron's tidy signature. I hired a lawyer named Tessa Monroe, voice like fine grit. Allergic to drama and in love with exhibits, she filed for a temporary restraining order, with Alicia's video. Roy's overlay the expired easement, the vendor mailbox, 3 months of invoices that read like a creative writing assignment. The HOA hit back with small cuts a day. Without water, a tow truck idling, then leaving Roy fined $20 for an unapproved flag holder, which made him madder than a bill with zeros. Then a newsletter with Patricia in a white blazer holding a shovel under a headline saying, "Pathway enhancement begins. Property values." Sore. Yeah, that happened. I tossed it, then fished it out because evidence belongs in a manila envelope labeled fiction that bills itself as fact. One evening, I sat on the steps with Grandpa's toolbox and felt small. Not the medic who cut a kid out of an upside-down car in the rain. Not the son who held his mother's hand at the hospice window. Just a man losing to a binder. The porch made its old creak, the keep-going sound. And I did. The turn slid under my door. Aaron's handwriting board, minutes with a line highlighted. Even if we lose in court, the porch will be gone by then. I was still holding that. When Tessa called, Judge signed a TRO granted hearing Friday at 9. I slept with that order on my table like a badge. The showdown felt like weather rolling in Friday 6 p.m. Clubhouse buzzing, folding chairs. Kids restless, a phone on a tripod, live streaming to the neighborhood page. Patricia at the podium with note cards and a smile that says nothing. To see here. To her left, Trent in a polo with his own name stitched like he needed reminding. We came in simple, me Tessa with a binder, County Inspector Dana Cho with a tablet, Deputy Mark Dalton, steady as granite. Patricia started with the usual stilts fiduciary duty uniform, depth community values, and I set my binder down. The way you set down a toolbox before fixing something that never should have been broken. Here's the 1971 plat. Here's the recorded ingress easement that predates the HOA. Here's the temporary construction easement that expired 10 years ago. Here are invoices to B&B Apex, which belongs to your brother-in-law. Same P.O. box as the HOA. Here's a video of you at dawn, telling the crew to cut my steps. And here is the restraining order signed yesterday at 2:43 p.m. By Judge Lang. Deputy Dalton read the key lines out loud. The room breathed like it remembered how, and Inspector Cho pointed to the live stream and said, "For folks watching at home, the porch sits outside HOA control. Any interference is trespass." A homeowner named Nora stood with a dues sheet and asked where the $14,900 for aesthetic consulting went, because the trail camera shows bare dirt on the days we supposedly got mulched. Another neighbor held up Alicia's clip on loop Patricia, with the laser saying, "Cut here, cut here, cut here." Roy walked to the projector and laid his survey ruler on the overlay HOA line. Here porch, here your paint 2 feet deep on his property. Patricia chose the worst hill. This is a smear. The documents are manipulated. The order will be overturned. We will continue the enhancement because my board has already voted. And that's when Deputy Dalton handed her a citation and said, "Calm as a metronome. Further interference violates the order, ma'am. Please pass the clipboard to the Vice President." It was a small motion with the weight of a building being re-leveled. Her fingers held, then loosened, and the clipboard left like it had been waiting to. The Vice President, sweating through his collar, read from the Bylaws motion for a vote of no confidence in President Hale. Hands went up like wheat in wind, and the motion passed. I didn't smile or clap. I stepped to the mic and said, "Step away from my porch." For one beat, nobody moved than she did. Walking off the edge of her own authority, while 40 phones recorded the sound a binder makes when it loses its teeth. That's where it ends for me. No balloons, no cake, just a window that finally stops rattling. What happens next is the part people fight about. Should an HOA be able to touch what existed before it did, in the name of uniformity? Or does a deed mean what it says, even when your porch offends a binder? Where's the line between community and control? When community is people and control is a gavel, with a handful of names behind it. You know what I mean. Tell me in the comments if you think the board was protecting value or protecting power. Would you keep the HOA, reform it, or cut it down to one page that says, "Be a neighbor"? And if this hit a nerve, like and share it with someone fighting a clipboard, then subscribe. I've got more of these, and I'm not done talking until porches are for neighbors again.